OMG. Karine Jean-Pierre treads water trying to clean up Sleepy Joe's latest mess. Over the last few weeks, Sleepy Joe has regurgitated the same far-left talking point that is utterly false. He continually says inflation sat at 9% when he was inaugurated, which is a bold-faced lie.
Inflation has gone slightly up. It was at 9% when I came in.
Inflation was actually at 1.4% when Joe Biden took office. CNN's Aaron Burnett pressed the president on the state of the economy, and once again, he made the economy sound much worse than it actually was.
The cost of buying a home in the United States is double what it was when you look at your monthly costs from before the pandemic. Real income, when you account for inflation, is actually down since you took office. Economic growth last week, far short of expectations. Consumer confidence, maybe no surprise, is near a 2-year low. With less than 6 months to go to Election Day, are you worried that you're running out of time to turn that around?
We've already turned it around. Look at the Michigan survey.
Turned it around? The guy who hasn't paid bills or grocery shopped in decades is really going to tell average Americans that things are better than they were 4 years ago? Guess we shouldn't be surprised. He doesn't know where he is, what's going on, or even who he is.
For 65% of American people think they're in good shape economically. They think the nation's not in good shape, but they're personally in good shape.
So he knows most Americans think the economy is in terrible shape, because the people his team are talking to are an anomaly.
The polling data has been wrong all along.
Sleepy Joe is so out of touch that he sees this as polling data and not everyday Americans. For the rest of us, this isn't some far-fetched idea. This is our livelihoods.
The idea that we're in a situation where things are so bad, we've created more jobs. We're in a situation where people have access to good-paying jobs.
A good-paying job is subjective. You can't call a $20 minimum wage good-paying when these minimum wage requirements cause services and products to soar through the roof. But then again, remember when the so-called educated left told us a $15 an hour minimum wage would solve all our problems?
And the last I saw, the combination of the inflation, the cost of inflation, all those things, that's really worrisome to people, with good reason. That's why I'm working very hard to bring the cost of rentals down, to increase the number of homes that are available. Let me say it this way. When I started this administration, people were saying there's going to be a collapse of the economy. We have the strongest economy in the world.
You know Xi Jinping and every other world leader is laughing at the United States. Our national debt is so out of control that we're borrowing nonstop from China just so we can send billions and billions to Ukraine with no end in sight. But yes, we have the strongest economy in the entire world.
Let me say it again, in the world.
Although GDP last week was far short of expectations.
Oh, it wasn't. Look, GDP is still growing. Look at the response of the markets. Overwhelmingly positive. Overwhelmingly positive. And one of the reasons why people feel good about it, not being as strong as it was before, is they believe that the Fed's going to respond.
They hope they're going to get a rate cut.
Yeah. Well, no president's had the run we've had in terms of creating jobs and bringing down inflation. It was 9% when I came to office.
Just because you say it doesn't make it true, Sleepy Joe. Then again, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre had to get creative with how to spin Sleepy Joe's crazy inflation numbers. Just watch.
We have to wrap up. Go ahead.
Great. I'm going to ask you about how the president talks about inflation. So 2 times over the past 2 weeks, the president said inflation was 9% when he came into office. Is the president misleading Americans on that, or does it just not realize that inflation was 1.4%?
So, and thank you for the question, because I know that we got a lot of incoming on this yesterday. And look, what the president was, the point that he was making is that the factors that caused inflation was in place when he walked into the administration.
Having factors for inflation doesn't magically make inflation 7.5% higher than it actually is. If this was the talking point Karine Jean-Pierre is going to run with, why is Sleepy Joe talking about specific percentages and not whatever the factors for inflation are?
when he took office. As you know, the pandemic caused inflation around the world to be by disrupting our economy and breaking our supply chains. As you know, we had to act quickly on dealing with the supply chain. He put together a task force. You saw the president do that. And just a couple of examples here, or one example, semiconductor shortages already existed when he took office. That increased costs on everything from auto parts to washing machines by some measures. It accounted for 1/3 of inflation in late 2021. Many countries saw worse inflation than we did, and obviously, and we have talked about this, we've been able to come out of that economic downturn in a better place than most of our counterparts across the globe. Reopening after the pandemic unavoidably increased inflation by unleashing pent-up demand. Inflation increased quickly as we reopened. Annualized core CPI in the second term of 2021 was 9%. And so he was talking about the factors that were in place that led to that.
That led to that. So even the press secretary is admitting Sleepy Joe was wrong. She's just dancing around the facts.
And look, and I said this earlier, I'm going to say it again, we're going to do everything, as we were talking about CPI, we're going to do everything that we can. This president is committed to doing everything that we can to fight inflation, and that's what the president was trying to speak to.
If Biden's so committed to reducing inflation, why does he keep supporting sending billions to Ukraine? Why is he pushing his bogus Green New Deal climate agenda that drives up energy and food prices? Why does the Biden administration keep forcing regulation after regulation on businesses instead of allowing the market to make a natural course correction?
Started in March of 2020, so those factors were in place for about a year before the president took office.
Look, the pandemic was happening, right? That caused inflation. That was happening. Supply chain was breaking our economy. That was happening. And it wasn't just us. It was globally. And they were, and other countries, our allies and partners, were seeing worse inflation than we were.
So Americans should be okay with inflation sitting at a 40-year high simply because other nations were worse off? That's definitely an elitist economic take.
And we are able to recover, and we are in a stronger position as we've recovered. But he was talking about what was in place, what was happening, the factors that led. And I talked about the second quarter of 2021, we saw that inflation was at 9%. So he was speaking specifically to the factors that led to that.
Ding, ding, ding. Karine Jean-Pierre admitted inflation was at 9% during the second quarter of 2021, which is right after Biden signed a $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief bill into law. As if printing that kind of money wouldn't have a dramatic impact on inflation. Then again, the Biden administration can't keep track of their talking points when a confused, old Sleepy Joe goes rogue. It almost makes you feel bad for them until you remember the amount of suffering the Biden administration has inflicted on millions of people.